Welcome to part one of a multi-part series of using Illustrator for the Alton Towers map project, which is like an introduction into how we do graphics work in computing at County High School. The software we're going to be using for this is called Adobe Illustrator. It's installed on your computer, and you can just find it here if you type EILLUS, and you'll find Adobe Illustrator. The product we're going to be creating for this project is a small vector project that looks a little bit like this on the screen. The finished product is actually going to be cut out of a piece of paper, and so the actual finished product that we're going to end up with is one of these little files, which is called a PDF, which essentially is electronic paper. But the main purpose of this project is that we're going to be using some vector tools, and something that we thought would be really nice for the students to build would be a vector map, which means all the little lines, essentially, you can zoom in as far as you want on them and they still maintain quality. So therefore it would be suitable for doing a product like that. Graphic designers use this a lot when they're making products that can be scaled to any size they want, and that's the beauty of vector graphics. So any of these little objects you can zoom in as far as you really want, and it doesn't really matter the quality maintains. So that's the idea of vector. We're going to be producing either a portrait or a landscape map for one section of the Alton Towers park, and so what I've done, this is what you're going to do in your lessons. You're going to pick a zone in Alton Towers. For the demo for this one, I've used X sector, and there's plenty of other zones you can go and use, each with their own different age group that they're aimed at. So you can have a little look around the park and try and figure out a zone. But really, for this tutorial, we're just going to be using and producing a map for X sector. But I'd rather everyone pick their own zone. The actual park map as of 2017 looks a bit like this. There's some fantastic resources on the Alton Towers website for how the park maps have changed over time throughout history, at least for the last 30 or 40 years. It looks brilliant to go and have a little peek at that. But essentially, the main entrance to the park here is actually, if you zoom out a little bit, it's flipped a little bit, that park map. The actual main entrance is here, and it's the other way up. So that's the main entrance coming in, and on the map down here, the entrance is coming in there. The zone I'm going to be having a go at is here, which is X sector, and we're just going to be producing a small little park map that says this is where you are. So to start off with, we are going to open up Illustrator. We're going to go File, New, give our project a name. I might call it X sector. This isn't what you're saving it as, it's just the name of the project. I'm going to make mine landscape, which is this button here, A4 piece of paper, and that will be perfect. You can click advanced, there's other options for the color mode that you're going to be using. CMYK is fine, and I'm just going to press OK. And there's your landscape piece of paper. The one section you really will want to have open at all times is layers. Because that's the section that actually allows you to stack things on top of each other. Next up, we're going to actually go to a Google map of Alton Towers. Like I said, I'm zooming in on X sector, and personally I think that would be fine as a little "you are here" map, or at least something that goes in a leaflet. And we're going to use the snipping tool, and this is going to give us something to trace on. Essentially that's what we're doing. I don't want Farley Lane, but that doesn't matter. I'm just going to do everything up to about there. That will do perfectly. Go into Illustrator. You can paste that straight in as an object. You can see that in layer 1 now, if I click there, you can see that this image has shown up as a layer that's gone inside there. I'm going to rename layer 1. I can do that by double clicking, and I'm just going to call this BG for background. That way I know that when I hide that layer, that everything in the background will disappear. That's the eye, but obviously I want it to show because I'm going to be tracing over it. I use the black selection arrow, not the white one, so we go for the black selection arrow. Each has its own purpose, and I'm just going to resize this map so it fits nicely on my landscape piece of paper. So into the corner, and you can see lots of students will do that at that moment in time, which is just squash it down, and proportions haven't been constrained. So what's happened is the image has become really squashed. So we'll press Ctrl Z twice, 3, 4 times now, and undo that. You just hold Shift when you're doing that, so you hold the Shift key, and that way you can get it perfect. I just want my little map to essentially look a bit like that. It doesn't actually matter if it goes over the edge, because the bits I'm only interested in is this central place. But essentially that's that, and I'm going to use this little block to put a padlock on it because I don't want to make any more changes to that layer. The next thing to do is actually create a new layer in which we're going to work. We want that on top, and the first layer we're going to work on, if I rename layer 2 with a double click, is I'm going to call this paths, because this is the layer that's going to contain all the little paths that represent all these lines. In the finished product that we produce, those paths are just going to be represented by, in my case, a black line. You could choose any colors you want, and so on. Next thing to do, just save the project file, save as. Go to this PC and find a place to save it in your end drive. Make a folder if you haven't already done so for this project. I'm going to put it in my Year 8 computing folder in a folder called Park Map, and I'll call it X Sector. The extension for Adobe Illustrator is AI, and you get the little AI symbol to tell you that it's an Illustrator project file. When it's saved, press OK. When it's saved, the little star will disappear from up here, and you can see that the project's saved, so feel free to close it. Or go on to video 2, which is what we're going to go on to next.